Hi everyone. Today we're going to be going over words 1 through 12 in round 3 of the Word Masters Challenge. We had a lot of success last time. Many of you did very well in the Analogies Challenge and we're really proud of you and we want to keep that going. As I go through the video today, you should be pausing frequently to develop your flashcards, and this is the homework that we'll be due on Thursday. So the flashcards need to include, pull this over here, the word, the part of speech, the definition, and a connection. And when I say connection, it could be a sentence, it could be an example, anything that helps you remember the word. And before we begin, just to cover myself with citations, I want to give credit and some props to Google Images, who helped with some of the pictures and images that I'll be showing you today. Our first word is linchpin. And linchpin is a noun, and that end of the word there, pin, does come in handy when you think about linchpin. And what a linchpin is it's two things. The first, it literally means a pin that is inserted into an axle to keep a wheel on. And it looks something like this. You may see these in maybe on your bike or something that involves a wheel. It also looks very familiar to what is often used on a grenade. A grenade has a pin in it, and when you release the pin, it activates the grenade. So that's a linchpin in the literal sense. In the figurative sense, a linchpin is something or someone that is important for something to work. For example, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are kind of like the linchpins of the Patriots dynasty, or at least they were back in the early 2000s. On our team, on the Costa team, you could argue that Mrs. Costa is the linchpin of the Costa team because she does a lot of work with making sure that meetings are scheduled, making sure that we stay in communication with the office and that we know what's going on around the building. So in some ways, she's kind of the linchpin of the Costa team. The next word is hone, and when you think of hone, which is a verb, and it usually pertains to a specific skill, and its definition is to sharpen or improve. And it's usually referring to a skill or ability. So, for instance, here's a group of kids. It looks like they're getting ready to start the baseball season, and they're out there honing their skill. They're practicing, and they're getting better. One of the reasons why Miss Halsey and I had you respond to 7 different peers' blog posts over this last writing assignment is that we wanted you to really hone the skill of giving effective, meaningful feedback. The next word is balky, and balky is an adjective, and it basically means stubborn or headstrong. And some of you may actually fall into this category, and you don't even know it. And here's a little picture of a dog, and you can see the dog kind of like almost doesn't want to listen. And the same thing happens to someone who's bulky. They're kind of stubborn, kind of headstrong. They think their way is the only way. Somebody who is bulky, for instance, would have a really hard time using feedback because they would think that their piece of writing is already amazing. So that's what you need to know about bulky. The next one is initiative. And now you may have heard your parents say to you, you know what, I really wish you'd take more initiative around the house. Or I'm sure Robin wishes I would take more initiative taking out the trash. And you might wonder, well, what does that mean? And initiative is a noun, and it has 2 definitions. The first is that it's an introductory step or a leading action. So it's something that begins something. It's the start of something. So, for example, as you know, the Goldstein team upstairs in 8th grade has a bring your own device initiative going right now. They are the first team in the school to give it a try, so it's kind of the first step or leading action. The second definition is the readiness or ability to take the first step. So in other words, you take the initiative to come and talk to your teachers about a poor test grade and get a better one. You take the initiative of asking for more feedback to do better on your next writing assignment. And sometimes you take the initiative to improve your grades by, well, you know. The next is the word endure, which you can see is a verb. And endure basically means to bear or tolerate, or basically to put up with. You may feel like sometimes you have to endure boring teachers, or you may endure your parents' lectures, or even endure having to take care of little siblings. It's often used to talk about things that are like physically demanding. So, for example, here's a picture of the Patriots having to endure training camp and the heat and all of the high expectations of the coaches as they work out to begin the season. And if I happen to be having a bad day and haven't had my Reese's, you may have to endure a crabby Mr. Spinelli, which nobody wants to have to go through. The next word is frugal, and frugal is an adjective, and basically what it means is economical and provident. And provident was actually kind of a flashback because it was one of our Wordmasters words before. And what it basically means is, as we know from before, that it means that you plan ahead. So that you're very smart. So somebody who's economical or provident or frugal is very smart with their money and they plan ahead. Frugal is often associated with like using coupons or looking for sales. You can see here, besides the coupons, we also have, this is from the 1970s Christmas Carol, of the gentleman, Scrooge, actually being very frugal with his money. He makes good decisions with his money. He doesn't overspend. He lives within his means. It also means lacking in expense or resources. So in other words, it's something that is cheap or something that doesn't have a lot to it. For instance, this is a diorama of the Cratchit Christmas dinner, which we know they didn't have a lot of money, so it is kind of a meager meal. You can see not a lot of food. So that's the two definitions of frugal. Mirage is next, and you've probably heard the word mirage before, and mirage is a noun, and it basically means an optical illusion. It's when you see something that really isn't there. Where you've probably most commonly seen it used before is usually if there's kind of in a movie or in a cartoon, if somebody is in a desert and they're really thirsty or really hungry, they may start to almost hallucinate and see a mirage of like an ocean or water. That's the definition of mirage. Now, some people may do that, but I know what I would instantly be thinking about. Debonair is next, and debonair is an adjective, and there are two definitions to debonair. The first is that someone who is courteous and sophisticated. And I found this picture online of this gentleman. As you can see, he looks pretty well dressed. He looks really sophisticated, well put together, and that's one instance of debonair. The second example is carefree, and I think from our reading this year, we all know if there's one character who fits that description, it's certainly Tom Sawyer. Here you can see him with Huck just hanging out on a log, having a great time, skipping school. Tom is very debonair in the way he tricks his Aunt Polly, the way he tricks those around him. He's very carefree and doesn't always think about the consequences to his actions. This next word is one that I may have actually caught a few of you doing in the hall, and that is to woo. And woo is a verb, and it basically means to seek to win, usually referring to love, affection, or admiration. So when you woo someone, you're kind of trying to get them interested in you. A very popular scene to illustrate this is the Romeo and Juliet balcony scene, which you will all read next year. And Romeo, in this case, is trying to woo her. Now, it doesn't always have to be about love. You could just try to woo someone to get their attention, their affection, or their admiration. I know one easy way to woo your teachers is with Reese's. Now, I'm sure you've seen this word before, and the word is launch. And it basically has multiple meanings. But the ones that you're most commonly going to see it with is as a noun. Now that says to begin or initiate, and I have made a mistake there, so I'm just going to fix this real quickly. It's a beginning or a start. And a launch is the beginning or a start of something. For example, when stores have a launch, it's their grand opening. So when different stores come into the town of Reading, they have a grand opening, a big party usually, and it's a launch of something. Now, as a verb, it also means to start. For instance, you often have to launch applications on your computer or your iPad, iPhone, iTouch, whatever it might be. If you're playing Angry Birds, going on Facebook, going on Twitter, you have to launch the application by pushing the button and getting it started. And the last definition, which you most commonly know it as, is to catapult or release, as in a rocket launch. Now, it is both a noun and a verb. It's the only one in this set that's both a noun and a verb, so be aware of that as you use the words and knowing their parts of speech. And the last one is meek. And meek is an adjective. And when you think of meek, you almost want to look at the sound that's coming out of the end of this and this eek sound and think of weak. Because meek is really gentle, really quiet, but there's also this really important definition. You know, someone who's meek might not speak up a lot in class. They might be kind of peaceful. They just kind of go with the flow. It's also described as someone who's submissive. And someone who's submissive basically does pretty much whatever anybody else asks them to do. They're pretty easily pushed around. And the image I have to illustrate this for you guys is, obviously this is a dramatization, but you can see right here we've got a person who's been miniaturized to show that they're kind of belittled by this other person, and the person's kind of pushing them down. And it just shows that somebody who's meek is kind of easily pushed around, very compliant. They'll kind of do whatever anybody asks them to do. So thanks for watching our video. Your homework due Thursday, which is tomorrow, is to make sure that you have the flashcards ready. Your flashcards should include the word, the parts of speech, the definitions, and any connection you have that's going to help you remember the word. We're going to have a quiz on words 1 through 12 on Wednesday the 11th, right before vacation, so it's still fresh in your mind. And don't forget, there's plenty of opportunities to woo us and do a good grade. Alright, have a good night. We'll see you guys later.